Good evening. I've got a very short story for you, brand new. I am fairly confident that no one will have heard this story before. I found it in a pretty obscure source, so I'd be amazed if you'd come across it too. Anyway, it's very short, and I'll tell you a bit more about it at the end. It's called The Gift. Scotland, the island of Skye, the northeast of the island, an area called the Braes, an isolated croft, the 1930s, the early 1930s. The doctor called. He looked at the scabs and scars on the bald head of the little boy and shook his head and said, there's nothing more I can do. I've tried everything. This will be my last visit. And he took his chink of silver, went out to his car, turned the handle, and a Morris Minor, a brand new Morris Minor he got himself, cranked the handle and drove off, continuing on his rounds. Parents were rather glad it was the last visit. He'd taken quite a few of their chinks of silver and most of their copper too. But it was sad. Their little chap, he would always feel different. And he would be teased at school for sure. But worse things have happened. It wasn't so terrible. It was about that time that the traveller woman, the peddler, came to their house. She made her rounds about twice a year. This was her last visit before the winter. She was always welcome. She came with her ribbon, her big sack, on her shoulder with her ribbons and buttons and coloured thread and eyes for teddies and dollies and ink, nibs and paper, and little brown bottles of rose water and glycerin. But this time her knock was rather feeble, and they went to the door and found her collapsed on the doorstep, cold, shivering, hungry, exhausted. Her waters had broken. They took her in, gave her a big mug of hot, sweet tea, put her to bed, and when the child was born, they kept her warm and fed her good, thick meals, and so very soon her milk flowed and mother and child thrived. When it was time to go, she had a little think, and she emptied out her sack and found her scroll of herbs and medicines, and unrolled it, and little pouches there with all her herbs and so on, and had a little think, and took out the wormwood and the one or two other things, and oh yes, and some elderflower, a few other things, and then went out into the garden, picked a few berries, begged a bit of lard off the good wife, and ground up a nice thick salve. Well, the parents had kind of given up hope with the little boy, and so had, but they were polite enough to not shrug and just say thank you. The little boy, though, he was prepared to try anything, and it didn't smell too bad. And he was very grateful, and he rather liked the peddler woman. Anyway, she strapped her newborn baby to her bosom with her shawl, wrapped it round tight, put her pack over her shoulder, and went on her way. And the salve worked. A few applications, and the hair began to grow back, and it grew back thick and strong and wiry and curly. And that was the hair that his sister grabbed. And down on the shore, he went down for the third time. He felt her fingers twined in his hair, holding tight, and he knew that his sister would never, ever let go. And that confidence that she would never, ever let go gave him renewed strength for one last effort, and he scrabbled at the rocks. And he didn't care how the barnacles tore at his hands and his feet and scratched his belly. He didn't care about any of that. He pushed and she pulled and she dragged him out, and they fell back on a bed of rotting kelp, covered and slippery with brine and blood and coughing and spluttering and crying and laughing too. And all the years of that boy's life, all into his old age, the first thing you noticed about him when you saw him from a distance was that shock of hair, especially when he was old and it was white. And all the years of his life, all the years of his long life, could always feel his sister's fingers twined in his hair. And he always knew that she would never, never let go.